Hello everyone, welcome back to the new video on goods and services tax. In the previous videos, we discussed about the concept of supply, place of supply of goods and place of supply of services, which is included in the module 2, that is levy and collection of GST of this course. So today we will be discussing about a new concept, that is time of supply. We will have a short introduction to the time of supply concept. So as we discussed in the case of place of supply, time of supply is also a very important concept because the liability to pay tax on goods shall arise at the time of supply, determined as per the provisions in the Act. So place of supply determined which is the component of tax to be paid, whether it is CGST, IGST, SGST, etc., depending upon the place determined in that particular transaction. So the liability to pay the tax after determining the place will arise at the time of supply. So this concept becomes important because of this reason. So time of supply is the point in time when a supply shall be deemed to have been provided. That means when a supply is actually provided or something is actually supplied. It fixes the point in time when the liability to pay tax arises. So time of supply is simply defined as the date on which the charging event has occurred. So upon this charging event, the time or the liability to pay tax on goods or services shall arise. So the CGST Act provides separate provisions for time of supply for goods as well as services in sections 12 and 13 of CGST Act, that is Central Goods and Services Tax Act. So same as in the case of place of supply, here time of supply also can be determined in two perspectives. First is in the case of goods and second is in the case of services. So in this video, we will have a very short discussion on the time of supply of goods in general cases. Okay, so time of supply of goods can be determined or shall be the earlier of the following dates. We are given two conditions. Upon these two conditions, which condition occurs first or which condition occurs the earliest, that will be considered as the time of supply of goods. So the time of supply of goods shall be the earlier of the following dates. The first one is date of issuing of invoice. I hope you are familiar with the term invoice. What is an invoice? When one supply is happening or when we purchase a good, we'll get an invoice. Okay, so at the time of supply, a small document will be, a document like paper will be handed over, that is known as invoice. So either it can be the date of issuing the invoice or the due date of issuing the invoice. Okay, and then second case is the date of receipt of payment by the supplier. That means the date on which the supplier receives the payment for this particular supply. So which date happens first or which date comes first, that date will be the earliest of the dates will be considered as the time of supply of goods in general cases. Okay. So when we talk about this time of supply of goods, in short, we can say time of supply refers to the date of receipt of payment or date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier. So this is the basic concept as to how we determine the time of supply of goods, either date of issuing of invoice or due date of the invoice. Then second one, date of receipt of payment by the supplier. Whichever happens first will be the time of supply of goods. Okay, so in a special case, if a supplier receives an amount up to rupees 1,000 over the amount indicated in the tax invoice, that means, for example, in the tax invoice it is explained, or it is said as rupees 99,000. The tax invoice is worth 99,000. But at the time when the supplier receives, in some cases, the supplier receives an amount up to rupees 1,000 over the amount indicated in the tax invoice. That means the supplier receives an amount of rupees 99,000 or rupees 1 lakh, 99,100 or rupees 1 lakh. Okay, say it is rupees 1 lakh. So at this point of time, how will we determine the time of supply? This is a very special case. So time of supply in case of excess amount of rupees 1,000 over the amount indicated in the tax invoice, the time of supply can be determined as follows. Okay, it will be to the extent of such excess amount shall, at the option of the said supplier, be the date of issue of invoice. That excess amount, that means if rupees 1,000 is the excess amount, for that excess amount, the time of supply will be the date of issue of invoice. Okay, so for the unexcess amount or for the invoice amount, we will determine the time of supply like keeping in mind these two conditions, whichever is earlier. And if there is an excess of rupees 1,000 from the amount of invoice, then for that excess amount, time of supply will be determined as the date of issue of invoice. Okay, I hope this is clear. So TOS means time of supply in case of excess amount is received up to rupees 1,000 of the amount indicated in the tax invoice at the option of the said supplier be the date of issue of invoice in respect of such excess amount. So whatever be the excess amount, for that excess amount the time of supply will be the date of issue of invoice, and for the other amount we will determine the time of supply as the above case, that is keeping in mind these two conditions. Okay, so let's have a small look at the second condition, that is the date of receipt of payment by the supplier. Okay, so this date of receipt of payment by the supplier, this point can be again elaborated in two ways. The date on which the supplier receives the payment. Okay, we can explain it as in two ways. First case is date on which the payment is entered in his books of accounts. So date of payment, or the date on which the payment is entered in his books of accounts. And second one is date on which payment is credited to his bank account. So whichever is earlier. So when we say the date of receipt of payment by the supplier, it means that it can be either the date on which the payment is entered in his books of accounts or the date on which the payment is credited to bank account. So whichever is earlier. So we take these two situations and consider whichever is earlier and we place it in the second condition. Then we consider the first and the second condition and we will determine the time of supply of goods. Okay. To make this concept more clear, let's see an example. Vibhull Limited supplied goods to Sharma Limited. The terms of the contract stipulated that goods are delivered to the factory of Sharma Limited. Goods were removed from the factory of Vibhull Limited on September 9th, 2018. Okay, keep in mind all these dates. September 9th, and were delivered to the factory of Sharma Limited on September 15th, 2018. So Sharma Limited received the goods on September 15th, 2018. Okay, then. So now the invoice was issued on September 18th, 2018. So Sharma received the goods on 15th and received the invoice on 18th of September 2018, and payment was credited to Vibhull Limited's account on October 20th, 2018. So Vibhull is the supplier and he received the payment in his account on 20th October. So however, the entry was made in the books when the check was received, that is on September 19th, 2018. Okay. So in the books, it was entered on September 19th, 2018. So as per the above So as per the above situation or the example, we will note down certain dates. So first date is date of issue of invoice according to our provision. Okay. What is the date of issue of invoice? That is September 18th, 2018. Okay. We'll note down actual date of issue of invoice is September 18, 2018. Then we had a provision in the bracket, that is either date of issuing of invoice or due date of invoice. Okay, sometimes in certain transactions it will be specified like the due date for issue of invoice will be this. So if it is said like that, we should consider that too. So in this case, due date for issue of invoice is September 9th. Okay. See, September 9th. That means when the goods are removed from the factory. So whenever the goods are removed from the factory of the supplier, that date will be the due date of invoice, due date of issue of invoice. So within that time, within September 9th, the invoice should be issued. That is the meaning. Okay. So here the due date for issue of invoice is September 9th. Then we have the second condition, that is date of receipt of payment by the supplier. So I told you this condition can be classified into two, that is date on which payment is entered in his books and date on which payment is credited, whichever is earlier. So let's see here. So when date on which payment is entered in his books, the entry was made in the books when the check was received, that it is on September 19th, 2018. Okay. Then date on which it is deposited in his account, that is October 20, 2018, whichever is earlier. Which is the earlier date? That is September 19th. So date of receipt of payment is determined as September 19th, 2018. Earlier of entry in books of accounts and credit made in the bank account. Okay, so these three are the conditions or the dates that we received when we went through the example as per the provisions of time of supply of goods, general provisions. Okay, so earlier of these dates will be the time of supply, which is the earlier date, that is September 9th, 2018. So therefore, as per the rule, time of supply would be the earliest of the above dates, that is September 9th, 2018. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. Go through this video again and again and try to understand the concept of time of supply of goods. So in normal cases, we have these two conditions, that is date of issuing of invoice or the date of receipt of payment by the supplier, whichever is earlier. So when we consider date of issue of invoice, we should consider the due date or the last date of issue of invoice. And when we consider the date of receipt of payment by the supplier, we should consider the date on which payment is entered in his books of accounts and also the date on which the payment is credited to the bank account. So this is a basic rule or provision regarding the time of supply of goods. So we'll talk more about more provisions in the next video coming up. So have a look at this video, understand the concept, learn the concept and learn the provision. Thank you.